All right. On today's show, Trump's tariffs, Jake Tapper's book on Biden, and why Trump is worse than just a fascist. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Share it with your friends. That is the best way to help me. 2 federal courts on Wednesday blocked Donald Trump's tariffs. Then an appeals court late yesterday reinstated the tariffs temporarily until they could wind their way through the courts. Trump can't negotiate trade deals if the courts haven't officially granted him authority to do so. This is a major setback for Trump, who claimed his tariffs would generate so much revenue Americans earning less than $200,000 a year would no longer have to pay income taxes. The U.S. Court of International Trade's 3-judge panel, made up of Reagan, Obama, and Trump appointees, they ruled on Wednesday that Donald Trump overstepped his authority granted to him under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That court saying the president is not given unlimited emergency powers in matters of trade. Well, as Nobel-winning economist Paul Krugman wrote after that ruling, quote, I mean, since when are 4% unemployment and 2.5% inflation an emergency, justifying the reversal of 90 years of policy? That's when Trump took office, we had 4% unemployment, 2.5% inflation. Not an emergency. Another federal court blocked the tariffs on Wednesday in a case brought by an Illinois toy manufacturer, so maybe I will be getting 30 dolls for Christmas after all. Then finally on Thursday, an appeals court temporarily overruled these decisions so the Trump administration could appeal them before our Supreme Court and let them decide whether there's an economic emergency that justifies Trump negotiating tariffs unilaterally without consulting our legislative branch. Despite Republicans controlling both chambers of Congress, Trump has yet to pass a single piece of meaningful legislation. I think it's been 6 lousy bills that mean nothing, like something about online porn and anyway, he is ruling by executive order, essentially, and all those orders are being stalled in the courts. His 2026 budget is stuck in the Senate with members of his own party complaining the cuts are too deep or not deep enough. Meanwhile, the Houthis in Yemen continue to bomb Israel despite Trump declaring victory over them after his airstrikes only succeeded in killing hundreds and hundreds of innocent civilians. Putin amassing 50,000 soldiers along the Ukrainian border in preparation for what many believe will be a massive land assault. This, despite Trump's guarantee, fighting in Ukraine would end on day 1 of his return to the presidency because he said, I know how to talk to Putin. Meanwhile, Trump's aiding and abetting mass starvation and war crimes in Gaza, despite his promise to end fighting there as well on day 1. He has accomplished 0 other than terrorizing marginalized groups. He has accomplished nothing other than cutting off foreign aid, which, according to the Washington Post this week, the Washington Post now estimates Trump has killed more than 96,000 adults, 200,000 children worldwide because of these funding cutbacks over at USAID. The Washington Post reporting 103 people die per hour because Trump has destroyed America's USAID program. Let me give you those numbers again. This is according to the Washington Post. Because of the cuts to USAID, 96,000 adults, 200,000 children worldwide have died. That's 103 dying every hour. Because they destroyed U.S. aid. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, is also running U.S. aid, and he takes exception to these numbers. He's offended when you bring it up because he's blaming other countries for not stepping in at the very last minute to replace the foreign aid that we suddenly decided to no longer provide. That's 103 dying every hour because Rubio, Musk, and Trump have cut foreign aid. That's according to the Washington Post. But Trump's promise to cut government waste so far has only increased spending for the year. Elon Musk now leaves Washington with none of his cuts codified into law, while bad-mouthing Trump for increasing the national debt. Elon Musk guaranteed he'd find $2 trillion to slash from the federal government. They say if it were codified into law, and there's a bill that's going to be introduced before the House of Representatives that will codify the DOGE cuts, comes out to a little under $60 billion. Promised $2 trillion in cuts, little under $60 billion. But Trump's and Musk's layoffs, the federal layoffs, not cutting spending, but they are leaving FEMA totally unequipped for tornadoes in the Midwest and the South. Governors like Arkansas's Sarah Huckabee now begging Trump for help that doesn't arrive. He has starved the FDA. We now have fewer meat inspections. What can go wrong there? He's canceled contracts with vaccine manufacturers. Our National Weather Service and the CDC have been sliced down to the bone. So the next flu, E. coli outbreak, hurricane, or forest fire will be way more deadly than necessary. And now his emergency tariffs are tied up in the courts. Everything's being tied up in the courts. All these emergencies, they're being tied up because, as Paul Krugman writes, when Trump entered office, there was never any economic emergency to justify them. And as I've been telling you, there are no emergencies to justify any of the emergency powers Trump lays claim to. But that's not how the people behind Project 2025 view the 200-some-odd unilateral powers that the National Emergency Act grants a commander-in-chief. Project 2025 and the Trump White House view all those emergency powers as tools, not to respond to an emergency, but rather to create one, or in Trump's case, several. There was no economic emergency on January 20th of this year when Trump was sworn back into office. Yes, our economy wasn't working for half this country, but not because we didn't have enough tariffs. When Trump invoked emergency powers under the Alien Enemies Act, claiming our nation had been invaded by Venezuela, there was no emergency because there was never any invasion. As I keep telling you, there's not been a single gunfight between Tren de Aragua and our brave cowards from ICE. It's not an invasion. It's not a war when the people getting rounded up don't even so much as throw a punch. After Trump took office, border crossings were approaching a 10-year low. But that doesn't matter. He lies and calls it an invasion, deports innocent men, women, and children, deports American citizens, 4-year-old American citizens suffering from stage 4 cancer. He separates kids with cancer from their medicine and their fathers. And there's nothing original here. You're not exceptional, America. Nothing original about Donald Trump. Nothing original about him viewing every phony emergency as an opportunity. But what is original is creating the emergency first for the opportunity. That I haven't quite seen before. Right now, Steve Bannon, the heart and soullessness of the MAGA movement, is calling for Trump to suspend habeas corpus, which our head of Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, thinks gives Trump the authority to round up and deport migrants. But Steve Bannon is saying, forget due process, forget habeas corpus, ignore our courts. Steve Bannon literally said yesterday that the emergency Trump faces right now is far worse than the one Lincoln was up against when he suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War. What emergency are you talking about? Because there is no crisis other than Donald Trump is our president. They're inventing emergencies to justify grabbing emergency powers. And this is why you never invite Steve Bannon on your show. You report what he says and then correct him. It's why you never interview Donald Trump. You report what he said and you correct him. Journalism isn't turning over an entire hour of Meet the Press to Donald Trump or Steve Bannon so their fusillade of lies go unchecked. Since the time of the Reichstag fire, which Hitler used to justify passage of the Enabling Act of 1933, giving him authority to govern without Parliament's consent, fascists have always viewed emergencies as opportunities to seize more power. Right after Hitler became chancellor in 1933, the Nazis blamed the communists for the Reichstag fire and used that fire as the reason democracy had to be suspended. But the Nazis didn't set fire to the Reichstag. Trump, on the other hand, he's setting fire to the Reichstag. Well, actually, he's not. He's claiming the Reichstag has been burnt to the ground, even though it's still standing. Because with this country, if Trump says the Reichstag has been charred to a crisp, his followers believe him. Trump is not waiting for the next terrorist attack, COVID pandemic, or economic crisis to gather up his emergency powers. No, this time around, with lies so big they would make Joseph Goebbels go red in the face, Trump, the grand wizard that he is, simply motions for these emergencies to materialize magically out of thin air, and nearly half this population sees them. They think they're real. Thanks to Mark Zuckerberg, who runs Facebook, Elon Musk, who runs Twitter, Fox, Newsmax, and AM Talk Radio, Trump's mass psychosis can spread far wider and deeper than at any time in world history. Trump has tools at his disposal that Joseph Goebbels could only dream of. And Trump, to his credit, knows exactly how to use these tools because he is a student of Hitler. He is a student of Goebbels. So yes, Trump is failing America. He always has failed America. But how many Americans know he's failing them? You might know, but half this country doesn't. How does the fascist or the Nazi keep his followers in the dark? Well, you defund Harvard, remove its tax-exempt status, forbid it from accepting foreign students, which Trump is trying to do, although the courts are tying up most of that. Our Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon from World Wrestling Entertainment, this week put public and private universities on notice. You're in danger of losing federal funding unless you become, quote, more in sync with the Trump White House. That's one way to keep your followers in the dark. When you have an FCC threatening broadcast licenses unless their news networks stop, quote, distorting the truth, when you have a new budget that cuts funding for Voice of America, public radio, public television, because supposedly they're bastions of liberal propaganda, that chills speech. and leaves stupid Americans even less informed and more susceptible to propaganda. Right now, reporters in this country are dissuaded from tackling the hard, singular truth that Trump is a fascist working straight off the Nazi hymnal. This is no longer the fascist playbook. This is now Nazi stuff. You chill speech, you violate the First Amendment when you weaponize the courts the way Trump is doing. When he sued ABC News because George Stephanopoulos said Trump was found civilly liable for raping E. Jean Carroll, instead of saying Trump sexually assaulted her. Like there's any difference. There's not. George Stephanopoulos didn't say anything wrong. ABC News would have won that case, and the judge would have ordered Trump to pay their legal bills. This is the definition of a frivolous lawsuit. But ABC News, owned by Disney, so they settle. They pay Trump $15 million thinking that would make it all go away. Even though the judge in the E. Jean Carroll trial put into writing twice that the jury found Trump civilly liable for rape in common law parlance, Disney settled. This was a slam dunk for Disney, a slam dunk for ABC News, but they settled because ABC is owned by Disney, and Robert Iger, the CEO, thought if he literally wrote Trump a check for $15 million, that would be the end of it. But it never is, especially when you write him a check for $15 million. Now, new reporting that ABC News is telling the women from The View to talk about something other than Donald Trump. You know, Disney teaches our children to stand up to bullies, not pay them shakedown money, expecting them not to come back for more. You stop it, you cauterize it from the start. Not Disney. The Wall Street Journal reporting Paramount, the parent company of CBS News, just offered Trump $15 million to settle his $1 billion lawsuit against 60 Minutes, where he claims in the lead up to last November's election, Bill Whitaker selectively edited an interview with Kamala Harris to make her appear smarter than she actually is. Sorry, Donald, she's smarter than you, way smarter than you. This is absolutely insane. $1 billion because Trump didn't like how intelligent Kamala Harris came off on 60 Minutes. In what effing universe is a lawsuit like that not immediately thrown out of court? But Trump's FCC demanded 60 Minutes turn over their unedited transcripts of the Harris interview. We all read those transcripts, and despite zero evidence from the transcripts that 60 Minutes concealed Kamala's alleged word salad, the new head of the FCC, formerly of Project 2025, accused 60 Minutes of distorting the news and warned because of that interview with Kamala Harris, he, the head of the FCC, may block any future merger that Paramount, the owner of 60 Minutes, might be planning. This is the definition of a First Amendment violation. The government, the First Amendment protects us from the government chilling speech. And by the way, Trump was offered to appear on 60 Minutes last year, but he turned them down because 60 Minutes wouldn't promise not to fact check him. He wanted to use 60 Minutes as an infomercial. Well, the head of CBS News and the head of 60 Minutes both are gone now because of this lawsuit, all because Paramount won't stand up to Donald Trump. They won't stand up to Donald Trump over a frivolous $1 billion lawsuit. Why? Because Paramount is cashing out. They're getting out of the news business. Sherry Redstone, who inherited a majority stake in that company from her father, Sumner Redstone, wants to sell the company to David Ellison, son of Larry Ellison, the billionaire founder of Oracle. Ah, yes, America's meritocracy hard at work for the American people. And I'm sure once he owns Paramount and 60 Minutes, David Ellison will have nothing but the best intentions for CBS News. The same way Jeff Bezos had nothing but the best intentions for the Washington Post until he decided, because he has so much business with the federal government, he better make peace with Trump. First, by ordering the paper not to endorse Kamala Harris, and after Trump won, ordering his editorial department to hire more conservative columnists who focus less on Trump and more on individual liberty. So, yeah, Trump is failing. But given our current media climate here in the United States, where local newspapers are getting gobbled up by private equity, it's getting harder and harder for voters to see just how bad Donald Trump is failing. Now, you may not like CNN, but it's all we got when it comes to legitimate cable news. You may not like Jake Tapper. I read his new book. Sorry, it's fantastic. And I love Joe Biden. I would vote for Joe Biden in a coma. If I'm in a coma or he's in a coma, I'd vote for him. Joe Biden, the best president in my lifetime. And I think had he been reelected, this country would be soaring right now. But I also knew deep in my heart that he wasn't all there. And I also knew at the same time that he was the only one who had any chance of beating Donald Trump, at least by the time he had to drop out. He was all we had. When Joe Biden dropped out, he was the only one who could beat Trump. And that's also in the Jake Tapper book. One of the reasons Joe Biden didn't drop out, one of the reasons he stayed in, is he knew from hard polling that Harris couldn't win. And until she became the candidate, I also knew Kamala Harris couldn't beat Trump. I wasn't so sure Biden could beat Trump. But I didn't think I knew that she would do worse than Biden. She did. She got 5 million fewer votes than Joe Biden. She lost every swing state, right? She lost Georgia, Arizona, which Biden won. She lost Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So I think she also lost Nevada. Pretty sure she lost Nevada. I may be wrong about Nevada. So, but I got caught up in it, and I honestly believed she could win. These are still available at my store, my best case, my bet. I saw a path for her. What I didn't see is her tacking to the center. Now, she wanted Mark Cuban. She was only touring the country with celebrities, and Mark Cuban, not Bernie, not AOC. Looking back, again, I don't know if anybody in the Democratic Party could have beaten Trump, except for Joe Biden with all his marbles. But by 2024, the only marbles were in his mouth. I couldn't understand a word he was saying. 2020 Biden? Yeah, 2020 Biden was the only one who could beat Trump. in 2024, but we had 2024 Biden. And I think the Democratic Party, since Biden bowed out, this party lacks the vocabulary to combat a real fascist. You defeat a real fascist with real progressive populism. And Biden knew that. He was running as a progressive populist. But you couldn't understand a damn word he was saying. I love him, and I would have voted for him if he had a resort to sign language. Looking back, after reading the Tapper book, Biden probably should have announced he wasn't running again in 2022, right after the midterms, right after that red wave never materialized. I mean, he did remarkably well in the 2022 midterms. He would have left office if he said, I'm done in 2022. He would have left office as the most consequential president since FDR, and we would have had a wide open primary season that would have given the Democrats 2 years to vet somebody. So if you read the book, the Tapper book, and I recommend you do, Biden's deterioration was sudden and precipitous. It really began all at once near the end of 2023, towards the beginning of last year. And by then, the infrastructure was in place, and it was almost impossible for him to step away. Should he have dropped out in early 2024? Looking back, probably before the primaries, but that would have been probably too late as well. Because other than Bernie and a few others, the bench isn't deep enough. These people haven't been vetted. Maybe Gavin Newsom, but, you know, I was singing Gavin Newsom's praises until, when was it, 2023, where Sean Hannity had Gavin debating Ron DeSantis. Do you remember that? Gavin did not do well in the debate with Ron DeSantis. So I'm not, other than Bernie, and I'm a little narrow-minded, I don't see, I mean, I know there are populists and leftists in the Democratic Party who would make great candidates, but it takes 2 years to vet them. So here's the thing. I'm going to get off the Tapper book in a second, but the Democrats like to blame everybody but themselves. You know, Putin was responsible partly for Hillary losing in 2016, but at the end of the campaign, Hillary lost because she ran a bad campaign. Yes, James Comey, with the press conference announcing that he's opening up the investigation, there are a lot of reasons she lost, and the world would be so much better right now. We'd have a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court had she won. Not a great candidate. Biden not dropping out earlier is one of the major reasons Kamala Harris lost. But in the end, she tacked to the middle. And she didn't make promises other than affordability. You cannot beat Trump promising affordability. Trump promised big things. She promised affordability, affordable housing, affordable health care, affordable education. She promised tax credits for parents who need affordable child care. What does that even mean? Trump promised no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime. See the difference? She promised a sensible policy on immigration. Trump promised mass deportations. See the difference? She ran a bad campaign. That's why she got 5 million fewer votes than Biden got in 2020. And that's also in the Tapper book. Look, there are two uncomfortable truths about November of last year. Biden got seriously ill and had to drop out, and Kamala ran to the center. So don't blame Jake Tapper. He's just the messenger. He didn't do anything. Everybody hates Jake Tapper now. I hate him because he's wealthy and successful. That I understand, but I don't hate him. The book is great. I'm just jealous of him, and I want him to fail because he's tremendously successful and good at what he does. That's, to me, is unforgivable. So don't blame Jake Tapper. All of us need to sit in the truth, including me. I was in denial about Joe Biden's senility. And I was angry with George Clooney for writing that op-ed. Biden was on the margins when it came to his memory, and Harris didn't know how to win. Don't blame Jake Tapper for reporting the truth. And we're defeating fascism right now. So don't blame Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or the Democrats. We have to defeat fascism. Joe Biden in 2020 knew how to defeat it. His body gave out. I'm not quite sure Kamala Harris knew how to defeat fascism. I know people don't like it when I say that, but I was talking to my sister about this a few weeks ago. And I didn't want to say this, but I'm going to say it. A few weeks ago, Kamala Harris showed up with her husband to the Met Gala. And I had a visceral reaction to that, and so did my sister. I mean, it says a lot about Kamala Harris that with all that's going on in our country right now, Garcia sitting in that dungeon in El Salvador, she went to the Met Gala. I don't know. Didn't sit well with me. Also didn't sit well with my sister. AOC showed up to the Met Gala in 2021 wearing a white gown that said, "Tax the rich." And a lot of people got angry at AOC for showing up to the Met Gala. You're a socialist and you show up to the Met Gala? Well, she wore a white gown that said, "Tax the rich." That's pretty good. One of my daughters is almost as old as AOC, and I remember thinking, not to be patronizing, but I remember thinking that's exactly what you do at that age when you're an elected member of Congress. That's exactly what you do. It was 2021. Joe Biden was president. Have some fun. That's exactly what you do. Kamala Harris with Trump as president showing up to the Met Gala doesn't sit well. Leave a comment. I know people are going to complain, and I know it's patronizing what I just said about AOC. I know that people are going to construe that as patronizing. You know, in this day and age, being patronizing isn't the worst thing. With what we're up against, well, we need CNN. That's what I'm saying. CNN isn't the problem. I mean, this anger towards Jake Tapper, he's not the problem. We need CNN, which, by the way, is still a very successful and profitable business. Makes a lot of money. Some years better than others, but CNN, I did some research, it averages about $2 billion a year in revenue. profits fluctuate. For example, in 2023, CNN profits were down. It only cleared $400 million in profits. That's a lot of money for a news organization. Despite losing in the ratings to Fox, CNN has successfully cultivated an audience that wants something that smells like news. Granted, CNN, way too many. I don't watch it, by the way. I go to the website. I can't. Or I'll read but you can, if you dig deep enough, you can find transcripts. I would never waste my time watching any television news, but I do go to websites. So CNN, I know, has too many pundits, but they have a lot of legitimate journalists, and they prove there's money to be made providing something that smells like news. Check out the CNN website, the K-Files. It's really good. And we're in danger of possibly losing CNN, despite it having profits of close to $500 million a year. That's because of Trump. The parent company finds CNN more trouble than it's worth. The parent company is Warner Brothers Discovery. Warner Brothers Discovery has much too much business before Trump's FCC and, of course, Trump's Justice Department. So they're restructuring the entire company, many believe, in order to ease out of the news business. Most insiders say this restructuring plan will set the stage for selling off CNN because $500 million, maybe $1 billion a year in profits, not worth the headache, not worth it. And the same goes for MSNBC, a hugely successful network. Makes about $500 million in profits each year. $500 million in profits for its parent company, Comcast, which is Universal and NBC. Now, MSNBC, as we all know, isn't nearly as good as CNN in terms of news. Their website is NBC News, which is the parent company of MSNBC, which is all under the Comcast banner. The MSNBC, the NBC News website, fantastic. MSNBC is the liberal version of Fox News, but not as profitable because they hire actual journalists who aren't willing to lie. And I do occasionally watch MSNBC, and their website is great. There's real journalism on their website and great commentary on MSNBC. They do great commentary, not so much hard news the way CNN does. But their parent company, Comcast, like Warner Discovery with CNN, their parent company has way too many other businesses susceptible to the Trump administration, so MSNBC is being spun off into a separate company at the end of this year. MSNBC definitely this year, and probably CNN in maybe 2 years. Both of them are being spun off into separate companies, which means they will no longer have the protection of a much larger parent corporation. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe. But it used to be that the very large media conglomerates had news organizations that had to be profitable, but they didn't have to be that profitable. The idea was these legitimate journalists had the backing of their multi-billion-dollar parent companies that were just as, if not more powerful than the government. But now with Trump in the White House, these parent companies are abandoning journalism just when we need them to protect legitimate news gathering operations. Paramount, Comcast, Disney, probably Time Warner Discovery in 2 years. And this worries me because MSNBC on its own might not be able to weather weak quarterly earnings or a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit filed either by Trump's personal attorneys or Pam Bondi's Justice Department, which have now all become synonymous. I mean, it's made up. The Justice Department is made up of Todd Blanche. Pam Bondi was one of his impeachment attorneys. Emil Bove, who he just appointed to a circuit court. The Justice Department is filled with Trump lawyers, Trump loyalists. So yeah, Trump is failing, but if a Trump fails in the woods and nobody reports it, did Trump really fail? Fascists always fail. They always fail. But like Hitler, Mussolini, Pinochet, Saddam Hussein, Bashar al-Assad, Trump will eventually attempt to accrue even more power while he's failing by replacing the big lie with a tsunami of even bigger gold-plated lies. He's doing it now, and without legitimate news organizations, with only frightened news organizations, Trump's failures become too depressing to report. They'll say, people have Trump fatigue. Let's hear some good news for once. That's how it works. That's how it works. Make us feel better about America. Tell me how exceptional we are. Give me patriotism and stop criticizing the president. That's how it always works when representative democracies become fascist states. Telling the truth will become un-American. We're all susceptible to thinking that. Look how angry liberals are at Jake Tapper simply for telling the truth about Joe Biden. You can't have fascism without the big lies, and you can't have it without ordinary people willingly denying the truth. I mean, I denied the truth about Joe Biden. I wanted to believe otherwise, and I still believe otherwise. So what's going to happen if we're not careful is news in this country will be patriotic. As Trump destroys everything, our lives, the news will remind us of American exceptionalism. That's how it works. You're going to hear a lot about American exceptionalism, but we're not exceptional. We're not special. That's just the milky, rich, sugary lie they feed us into complacency. I just finished Sinclair Lewis's book called It Can't Happen Here. The book imagines a fascist getting elected president and America turning into Nazi Germany. He wrote it in 1935. It's an amazing book. It never got made into a movie because Hollywood censors didn't want to offend Hitler. They were still doing a lot of business in 1935 with Hitler. So it was during the 1930s, they wanted the script rewritten so that in the movie, America didn't elect a fascist, they elected a communist president. And the movie never got made. That nightmare scenario of a communist president as opposed to a fascist president was more digestible for the commanding heights of the American economy in the mid to late 1930s. You could demonize a communist don't demonize a fascist. Because until Pearl Harbor, in America, Stalin was more to be feared than Hitler. Communists were seen as more dangerous than Nazis. Certainly, well, anyway. The book is an indictment of those very people who wanted the movie version of it to be an attack on communism and not the Nazis. It's an attack on communism. It's an attack on the Nazis. It's an attack on ideologues. It is a celebration of the only thing that makes sense, representative democracy. It's a great book. Nobody has the answer. That's the message. The communists don't. The fascists don't. The people do. Democracy. That the tools we've been given by these sexist, slave-holding, genocidal maniacs, our founding fathers, the tools they have given us are the only answer. Congress, listen to Ralph Nader. The only solution to all this madness is the House of Representatives, the Senate, not the Supreme Court and not the president. We have the tools. We have to use them. It's a hostile gesture telling somebody to read a book. It's a major commitment, but it can't happen. Read the Cliff Notes. It was written in 1935. Do they still have Cliff Notes? It was written in 1935 when most Americans insisted fascism could never come to America. Can't happen here because we're exceptional. We believed we can't become a fascist nation because we've grown accustomed to all our freedoms. If you're a white heterosexual male, you're accustomed to your freedoms here in the United States. That's the lie. That's the dangerous lie of exceptionalism. It lulls you into complacency. You know who also believed in exceptionalism? The Germans, when they elected Hitler. And by the way, the Germans had more reason to believe that they were exceptional back then than Americans. But when the Germans elected Hitler, they believed in German exceptionalism. In fact, a lot of Germans thought Germany was so exceptional, they voted for Hitler just to get him out of the way. Those were the right-wing conservative nationalists who thought Hitler was a crank, but they figured, let's just vote for him, get it over with already, so the German people will learn their lesson. That's what a lot of the von Papen, was that his name? That's what von Papen figured. But voters, they don't learn their lesson. They don't. Remember COVID? Remember how Trump killed 1 million Americans and crashed the economy? Remember that? Half this country forgot that lesson. Yesterday, he defunded COVID vaccines, bird flu vaccines. Well, back to Nazi Germany. I'm going to be talking about Nazi Germany for a little while. How am I doing on time? Okay. So there were what are called accelerationists in Germany. And there are accelerationists right now in America. Again, we're not exceptional. And once you realize that, it's liberating. It can happen here. It can. We're not exceptional. Voters in America are just as susceptible to the poisonous charms of Nazism here as they were in Germany. So when you're confronting Nazis, and we are right now, let's stop sugarcoating it. Let's stop calling it fascism. That was a big step for us to say Trump is a fascist. General Mark Milley, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, what's his name? John Kelly, his chief of staff, the general, both have said Trump's a fascist. Well, he's more than a fascist. Nazi. And it's time to stop pretending otherwise. I know it's upsetting. You're going to lose sponsors if you lose the argument when you say the truth. So, accelerationists. There are two types of accelerationists. There are the reasonable accelerationists, like the conservative nationalists who voted for Hitler. Let's just get him out of the way. Let's speed up the process and be done with him already. Let's just have him do just enough damage to Germany so voters never do that again. That's one type of accelerationist. And we have those types of accelerationists inside the Democratic Party. They're the Republicans who live inside the Democratic Party, who are saying right now, for example, secretly they're saying it, but they're saying it, let the Republicans pass the 2026 budget. This is accelerationism. They're saying, let them cut $1 trillion in Medicaid and food stamps. Let's show America who these people really are, and then they'll wake up, and we'll have somebody to run against in 2026. That's what the accelerationists inside the Democratic Party are privately saying. Those are the accelerationists. And by the way, I'm not beating up on the Democratic Party, but it is right now controlled secretly by accelerationists who think they have nothing to lose even if they don't win the midterms. It's the pundit, it's the consultants, it's very rich Democrats who want Trump to show his hand so the American people wake up. They're banking on a blue wave. They're banking on Americans feeling so much pain from the 2026 budget cuts that voters will come crawling back to the Democratic Party. And if voters don't deliver a blue wave, well, there's always 2028 for these accelerationists inside the Democratic Party. They'll just run another middle-of-the-road corporatist who spews tired pablum about affordability and an opportunity economy. If I hear one more Democrat talk about how we need an opportunity economy, I'm just going to vote for Trump. I'm just going to take a wrecking ball. What if you don't want an opportunity? Then what? What if you just want to live a quiet life? Then what? Nobody ever asks Democrats or Republicans, what if I'm lazy? What if I don't want to work? Should I die? That's the question that should be asked when they talk about work requirements for Medicaid or work requirements for food stamps. Hey, I'm lazy. I'm being serious here. Tell me what happens now. I'm lazy. I don't want to work. Tell me to my face that I should starve to death or die for lack of health care. Tell me to my face that lazy people should die and starve to death. Well, I'm talking about the accelerationists in the Democratic Party who want things to happen really quickly right now, have everything turned to crap so Democrats win in 2026. Well, the problem with that thinking is a lot of the cuts the Republicans have scheduled won't be felt until after the midterms. Trump and the Republicans are going to be a lot tougher to beat next year. They are. They know what they're doing. They know how to steal elections. Because they're evil. The other problem, Trump is skilled in fascist propaganda. He will bring our country to its knees economically. That's why his job is to cut taxes for the rich and destroy the economy to create buying opportunities for people who have billions and billions of dollars of cash so they can own more of our country. And as he brings our country to its knees economically next year, he will, because he's a master of fascist propaganda, he will deny the economy is horrible while at the same time scapegoat the people who destroyed the economy. He will deny the economy is horrible while simultaneously scapegoating the people who destroyed it. That's how it works. Deny things are horrible, but also blame, scapegoat marginalized communities, and of course the Democrats, for making things so bad, but at the same time you insist it's the greatest economy the world has ever seen. That's what fascists do. That's part of the trick. The fascist, Donald Trump, will force cognitive dissonance upon imbeciles who have no idea what cognitive dissonance means, including Trump. You play to Americans unable to keep two opposing thoughts in their brains. Tell them things have never been better and that Democrats, transgender athletes, black people are to blame for things being so horrible while things have never been better. It's those competing ideas that drive simple minds further towards a leader who will assure them things are perfectly okay. There's nothing a little bloodlust and sadism can't fix. This is Nazi crap. And this is how Trump works. You say the economy is doing great, and the reason the economy is doing so poorly is because of the migrants, the gays, the transgender community, Canada, Mexico, black people, Hispanics, Jews, Arabs, women, Palestinians. That's why things are horrible, but things are great. It's just the liberal media, the Democrats still working inside the Congressional Budget Office and the General Accounting Office. They're manipulating data to make me look bad, but things are actually really great. Pay attention to Tom Homan, the border czar. Watch what he says about the migrant crisis. He's doing this. He says this is now the securest border in American history. He says in only 100 days, Donald Trump has succeeded in keeping the migrants out and securing the border. And in the same paragraph, Tom Homan says we need to spend $150 billion to stop this invasion of migrants pouring over the border, murdering, kidnapping, and raping. Both things can't possibly be true unless you're living under a Nazi regime. People like Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, and Adolf Hitler, they are a different type of accelerationist. They say, flood the zone with so much gasoline so that when you strike the match, it all goes up into flames and nobody has any idea what just happened. Hitler called it the Blitzkrieg. The Blitzkrieg. Feed your soldiers methamphetamines and drive them into France so quickly nobody can figure out what's happening, including your own army, your own soldiers. And the same applies to propaganda. You deploy a blitzkrieg of executive orders. This week it was pardons and, of course, accusations. You just blitzkrieg the zone with executive orders, pardons, promises, accusations. You do this so the American people have no idea what's real, mostly because our enervated for-profit news media has no idea what's important other than keeping their jobs. And can you blame them? Can you blame reporters, journalists for wanting to keep their jobs? This is what Nazis do with accelerationism. Make things happen so quickly nobody knows where the next shot will be fired from. So, I had 2 weeks off, and I had an interesting experience trying to take 2 weeks off. Because every day there would be a fresh hell coming out of the White House. And every day I said, okay, vacation over. Who am I kidding? I have to respond to this. You know, I'd wake up, the Department of Homeland Security is preparing a reality show where migrants compete for citizenship. That's an actual thing. I said, vacation over. I have to, I'm going to explode. But then I heard a little voice saying, just wait. Tomorrow, it'll be something else. And it was. It was Trump's $40 million army parade next month to celebrate his birthday. And then the next day, it was something else. And the next day, and the next day. And I noticed every day he throws more lit rags on to the gasoline. I remember that's what taking 2 weeks off did for me. It reminded me how he is a master of propaganda, right-wing Nazi propaganda. He learned from Joseph Goebbels and Hitler. Create a lot of nonsense. And supposedly, if the richest 1% get their $4 trillion tax cut this year, it expires December 31st. So if he can give them their tax cut this year, then all of this will have been worth it for the donor class. If this budget passes, then all of it makes sense for the donor class. And then, after they get their tax cut, when another COVID hits, when 1 million Americans die because Trump only understands how to destroy government, not deploy it, everyone who got their tax cut will suddenly say, you know what, let's get a Democrat in there, a Democrat who won't arrest us, someone like Barack Obama. He won't arrest us, and have him clean up the mess. So Americans, or at least half this country, forgets what the Democrat is cleaning up. So the way it works here in America, people die, lives ruined. And then historians for hire, like Michael Beschloss or Walter Isaacson, they'll write, and yet the Republic survived. I'm going to cry. We made it through. The Republic survived. Yeah, 1 million dead from COVID. They didn't survive. But the Republic survived. Thanks. Great. So, how am I doing on time here? Should I keep going? Yeah, I'm going to keep going. What we're experiencing right now, everybody is depressed. Everybody I know is depressed. They can't believe they live in a country that behaves this way. What we're experiencing right now is January 6th, Part 2. It's a new and improved January 6th, but with the same underlying principle, which is flood the zone, create confusion, make it so nobody knows what to believe other than I, Donald Trump, and only I, Donald Trump, can fix it. That was the original plan for January 6th, and it had a name. They called it the Green Bay Sweep. That's exactly how Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro and the people meeting inside the Willard Hotel during the run-up to January 6th planned things to unfold when it came time for Mike Pence to count the votes. They knew it doesn't matter what the truth is. Inject a phony slate of electors from swing states into the counting of the votes for president. Doesn't matter you're defrauding the government of the United States. Flood the zone. Manufacture just enough doubt so Vice President Mike Pence transforms the ceremonial role of declaring Joe Biden president. He transforms that into becoming a defender of election integrity who must, in the name of all that is holy and decent, suspend the count for 10 days until we get to the bottom of who the real electors are from Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, and Michigan. That was the plan for January 6th. The Green Bay Sweep, they called it. Sow confusion, chaos. And when there's confusion, Donald Trump can proclaim, I and only I can fix this. It's the Green Bay Sweep. And they're at it again. But they've learned their lessons this time. See, it didn't work 5 years ago because the angry mob broke into the Capitol and destroyed everything. That wasn't the plan. At least, it wasn't the plan for some of the Republicans trying to steal the election. It certainly wasn't the plan for such high-minded institutionalists like Speaker Johnson, Jim Jordan, Ted Cruz, Ron Johnson, Mike Lee, Rudy Giuliani, Scott Perry, Andy Biggs, and all the other un-American reprobates who Fani Willis indicted down in Georgia. Their plan wasn't for the Capitol building to be ransacked. When the unwashed true believers destroyed the Capitol, they ended up also destroying the plan. There was a plan. The plan wasn't for the mob to get so worked up. So Mike Pence did the right thing. But even he couldn't stop the Green Bay Sweep. That was the plan. They were, even with Mike Pence doing his patriotic duty, they were still planning to challenge every slate of electors. And there was nothing Mike Pence could do about that. They were going to drag the process out over days. And an angry mob was supposed to gather outside the Capitol. That was the plan, with or without Mike Pence going along with it. The mistake was the mob broke into the Capitol and ruined the Green Bay Sweep. Ed Martin was the interim Washington, D.C. prosecutor this year. A total crackpot, would never get confirmed by the Senate. So Judge Jean Pirro from Fox News is now the interim Washington, D.C. prosecutor. Ed Martin, very dangerous man, he helped organize the march, the Stop the Steal March on January 6th, which he describes as Mardi Gras that got a little out of control. You hear that a lot from high-minded MAGA Republicans. It was, they were tourists who got a little enthusiastic because that was the plan, for it to get a little out of hand, not what happened on January 6th. So Ed Martin is now running the pardon office inside our Justice Department. You've been seeing all these pardons all week. He's working right now on a total pardon for Stewart Rhodes, the head of the Oath Keepers, who had been doing close to 20 years for seditious conspiracy until Trump commuted his sentence. Okay? Right now, Ed Martin is working to clear Stewart Rhodes' record to restore his legal right to purchase a firearm. Until Stewart Rhodes, head of the Oath Keepers, gets a full pardon, he can't buy any weapons. That's what Ed Martin is working on right now inside the Justice Department. The biggest problem facing our country, according to Ed Martin, how can Stewart Rhodes legally purchase a firearm? Stewart Rhodes, head of the Oath Keepers, testified during his trial that he brought his gigantic cache of weapons to Washington, D.C. in the lead up to January 6, having been assured by someone in the White House, we don't know who, that Trump would invoke the Insurrection Act sometime on or after January 6 and deputize Stewart Rhodes and his Oath Keepers to restore order. That was the plan. Now, whose plan was it? There were several plans. Let me just say, I don't want to sound like Donald Sutherland in the movie JFK. There were several plans. People like General Michael Flynn, Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, Rudy Giuliani. They were meeting at the Willard Hotel in the run-up to January 6th. MAGA Republicans in Congress. They are well-versed in the dark arts. And the way the dark arts work is you plant seeds, provide opportunities, and then stand back to see what grows. There's no grand master plan. You just plant some seeds. The Kennedy assassination wasn't precision. It was, we'll get him today or maybe tomorrow. Let's see what happens. They weren't planning. Nobody was planning for the mob to storm the Capitol. I don't believe it. I don't believe Trump thought they would storm the Capitol. But maybe I'm naive. They were planning for the mob to gather around the Capitol, ominously, for 10 days, to creep out lawmakers, scare the Supreme Court, bother, intimidate the media, and of course, terrify the American people. Constitutional crisis. The plan was to have these January 6ers hang around outside the Capitol, while inside, Republican lawmakers would use legal parliamentary tricks to stall the count for 10 days. 10 days. That was the Green Bay sweep. Delay the count with confusing, seemingly legal challenges, while an ominous cloud of impending violence hung over Washington, D.C. Impending violence. The threat of violence. That was the plan. But the mob got too worked up. Unlike the people manipulating the mob was true believers. They believed this. And again, Trump demonized Mike Pence, who wasn't going to play along. So the mob, they wanted to kill him. Pence was supposed to refuse to certify. Well, it saddens me to say this, but Mike Pence is a transphobe, a homophobe, but he is an American hero. He is an American hero. He just is. I despise him, but he's an American hero. If I met him, I would shake his hand. Had he followed Trump's orders and not certified, that would have unleashed the slow motion chaos Trump was hoping for. Trump was never banking on nut jobs with zip ties and bear spray to defecate inside Statuary Hall. He was banking on the real nut jobs with law degrees to defecate on our Constitution. Trump supporters were supposed to gather around the Capitol, linger for 10 days. And while the crowd got bigger and bigger around the Capitol, Republicans would challenge each slate of electors, state by state, dragging the process out for 10 days as our country sunk deeper and deeper into uncertainty. That was the plan. And that's why, of all the people who went to jail from the White House, who went to jail? Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro. They went to prison for contempt of Congress. I think they're the only Trump confidants who ended up going to prison for January 6th. I think. Why did they go to prison? Contempt of Congress. The January 6th committee wanted them to testify about the Green Bay sweep, but both of them refused subpoenas from the January 6th committee. And they each went to prison for about 4 months. They weren't going to testify. There was no way those two would ever go under oath and give away this game. That was the game. When they broke into the Capitol on January 6th, they interrupted the Green Bay sweep. When they broke in, Paul Gosar, the neo-Nazi loving congressman from Arizona, Republican, and Ted Cruz, senator, they were in on it. When Capitol Police could no longer hold the line and they broke in, Cruz and Gosar were busy challenging the slate of electors from Arizona. That was the Green Bay sweep they were dragging out. Cruz was calling for a 10-day emergency audit of all the results from all the key battleground states that Joe Biden had won. 10 days, that's what he was calling for. That was the plan. 10 days that shook the world. That was the plan. All right. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. I have some more notes. I'm refreshed, and I'm doing a pretty good job staying on top of things. I enjoy trying to sort through these lies. It's part of my OCD. I like forming order out of chaos. I'm going to be okay, and so will most of us, which is why we must dedicate our energy towards those who are not okay. The migrants, the LGBTQ community, especially the transgender community, Black people, people of color, especially Black people and people of color when they're dealing with cops, Hispanics, Arabs, Palestinians, Iranians, Jews, Muslims, women, feminists, federal employees, Catholic missionaries, children, poor children, adults living at or near the poverty line, people suffering from physical and mental disabilities, old people who rely on Medicare and Medicaid. As my children say, check your privilege. Check your privilege, and if you're okay, help somebody who isn't. You know, sometimes cliches say it best. So forgive me. This is trite. It's banal. But the most revolutionary act right now is the courage to love, to take care of each other, I know. Trite. But it is as simple as remembering to breathe and drink plenty of water. So many of my problems could be solved simply by remembering to breathe and drink water. And I don't do it enough. I don't do it enough because I refuse to believe something as simple as water and oxygen can solve seemingly insurmountable problems. I mean, I'm David Feldman. Certainly, it can't be water. It can't be oxygen. It can't be love, compassion, and tenderness. That's way too simplistic a solution for a man of multitudes like David Feldman. No, David Feldman must find complicated solutions because he's a complicated man. No, it's breathing, water, tenderness. Water, oxygen, love, and compassion. There's no money in that. There's no money in water, oxygen, love, and compassion. Take this pill. You need a pill. Well, we're humans. That's why we got to the moon. We rarely settle for the simple solution. We rarely choose the path of least resistance. So breathe, drink water, and unrequited love. For the sake of unrequited love. Love for the sole purpose of not getting anything in return. That's courage. That's courage. And if you're like me, a coward, it's really important to recognize and celebrate the courage in others. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. I got a lot more to talk about, but I would just go on for hours, and I'm going to have to do another show either tomorrow. I mean, I just got notes and notes and notes and notes. Okay. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Share it. That's the best way to help. If you share this, what else are you supposed to do? Like it, share it. What else? I don't know. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. And I don't know when the next show is. I'm going to do more shows. I feel like doing one tomorrow, but I don't want to burn myself out. But okay. Thank you, everybody.